Welcome to the Chess Angle. This is not your typical chess podcast. If you're an amateur or club-level player, the Chess Angle is for you. Our content is aimed at busy adults who are serious about the game but have limited study time. Featured guests include both amateur and titled players alike. And now, here's your host, Director of the Long Island Chess Club, Neil Bellon.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This week's episode is going to be our Season 7 finale. Now, what I do with the seasons as far as the number of episodes, I don't have a set number. I thought I was going to do that. I thought I was going to say, okay, every 15 episodes or every 20 episodes, whatever it is. But now I just go by what's going on in my life and my schedule. And right now it's kind of a life happens type of thing. So I'm kind of feeling it. So the way I do it is I take a break when I feel it's time to do so. And it is right now. As you can probably hear from my voice, I'm still not feeling well from last week. Not quite 100%. A few other things going on. And these breaks also help me keep things in focus for the long term. Kind of helps me clear my head and keeps everything fresh. As you know, this podcast is a side hustle for me, so I'm not a full-time content creator. So when you have other things going on and you're just not doing this all day, these breaks, I think, are important for the long term. And this week, I'm going to keep it light. This is going to be sort of a friendly, kind of fun discussion. I know the past few episodes were kind of hardcore chess improvement, which is fine. So I thought I would do something a little more light, a little more fun, just to mix it up. And for the season finale, I don't have an exact date of when I'll be back. I'm probably going to take at least 2 or 3 weeks off. Hard to really know. I know last season I gave an exact return date, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. I'm going to kind of feel it out. And when I know the date of the season 8 premiere, I will post that on our website and on our Twitter page, or X as they now call it. I'll also put it in the main podcast description. So I'm going to take a break for an indeterminate amount of time, probably 2 to 3 weeks, something like that. But the summer is generally slow for podcast downloads in general. People are outdoors. They're not on their work schedule. They're on vacation. They're doing other things. So I think it's a good time to take a break anyway. So what I'm going to do this week, something a little bit different. I'm going to give a reaction to a chess.com article that I saw. It's a recent article. It was posted only about 2 months ago in May of 2024, and it's titled 7 Chess Hot Takes That Are Just True. So these are 7 opinions that the author believes are true. It is written by Pedro Pinhata, who is a senior digital content writer for chess.com, who writes articles, feature announcements, event guides, and more. He's been playing chess since 2019 and lives in Brazil. I'm taking that from the bio directly from the article. So I believe he's a fellow amateur player, but I thought this article was very interesting, and I kind of want to go through his 7 hot takes and give my thoughts on them. So his first one is stalemate being a draw is awesome. And I agree with him completely, because there's this school of thought out there that stalemate should be a win, that if you stalemate your opponent, that should somehow be a win. But that completely takes away from the beauty of it. It also gives someone in a losing position a chance to turn the tables, right? Because let's face it, chess, it's such a, I don't want to say a zero-sum game, but it's such a cruel game. Like if you are down a goal, or if you're down a few points in a sporting event, whatever it is, soccer, basketball, football, there's a chance you can catch up, and a reasonable chance. But let's face it, in chess, if you're down a piece or a lot of material, or you're having a clock issue, let's say, it's really, really tough to get back into it, and stalemate can be a surprise resource. So here's what Pedro says. He writes, stalemate being a draw is awesome. If there's one thing I cannot understand, it's why on earth would anyone have a problem with stalemate being a draw? Honestly, it's one of the best rules in chess. Yes, I understand that it quote unquote makes no sense and it's quote unquote confusing for beginners. But without stalemate, moments like this would never be possible. And he has a video of a stalemate you can check out. Stalemates make chess more dynamic. It gives the losing side something to play for and keeps the winning side on their toes. Would you really be as excited to watch events like the Speed Chess Championship and the Bullet Chess Championship if you knew there would be no stalemate swindles? I doubt it. So I completely agree. It adds to the beauty of the game, and those swindles are awesome to watch. So yes, stalemate being a draw is an excellent thing. And of course, he's intending, I believe, this to be kind of a lighthearted article. Not everything is serious and some of it's tongue in cheek, but I think it's very well written and it's an interesting discussion point. Now, the next thing he mentions has to do with the addictive nature of online chess. And this is actually, all kidding aside, something I feel strongly about. And it doesn't matter where you play online. It doesn't matter if it's chess.com, Lead Chess, wherever it is, even Yahoo Chess. For those of you who are my age, you might remember Yahoo Chess. If you youngins don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, you're not missing anything. But anyway, I was actually thinking of doing a dedicated episode on the addictive nature of online chess. And I started putting it together, but I realized I didn't quite have enough for one episode. And then I'm like, this might be a good guest episode, but I've been very lazy booking guests lately, if I'm being honest. We're transparent here. So I decided when I saw this article that I would talk about it here since he mentions it, because as I said, I didn't have quite enough material on it for a full solo episode. But anyway, I will say this. I do believe online chess is very addicting. I've heard many stories and people end up staying up late and being late for things and they don't know when to stop. He talks about that here, but he says his second hot take is that chess.com should come with a Doomsday device. And here's what he writes. I do not possess the emotional structure required to know when to give up and stop playing. I simply cannot escape the quote unquote just one win and I can stop trap. I've lost sleep, run late, and seen my rating tank countless times. And I'll just keep doing this for as long as I play chess. We live in the age of artificial intelligence and we've seen how wonderful it can be, as well as how disturbing. Can chess.com please use it to pull the plug on my account when they detect I'm entering yet another tilt-inducing losing streak? Preferably keep me from playing games for a few days as well. So I think all of us can relate to that on some point. I've spoken about this before. We say, okay, we have an hour before bed. I'm just going to play a few games. And then you're up till 2 a.m. and you lose out on sleep. Or you say, I just want to win one more game. Like, let's say you lose a couple of games in a row. Well, I don't want to log out on a loss. I want to log out on a win. And then you end up playing again for like another 2-3 hours. So when he says chess.com should come with a Doomsday device, obviously he's saying that partly in jest, but I think we can all relate to that. But it would be interesting if there was kind of a window that popped up. Let's say after you lose 3 games in a row, like, do you want to stop? But as with any website, they want to keep you on it. So I doubt that's going to happen. But I thought that was an interesting commentary on the extremely addictive nature of online chess, which is discussed, but somehow I don't think it's discussed enough because it can certainly be an issue for many people. Now, his third hot take is that online chess is better than over the board. And here's what he writes. I can already hear the cries of the boomers, but it's time someone admits that playing chess over the board is less than optimal. Playing online is simply easier, faster, and more fun than using real pieces. It's also much easier to carry around a phone than a chess set, and we know you're not playing OTB chess when you're in the toilet. Now, if you're thinking about writing an angry comment proving how stupid I am, please consider sending me a handwritten letter. After all, old school is so much better, isn't it? Okay, so partly in jest there, but I know he's kind of playing around, but the truth is, over the board, there's nothing like it. Just sitting across from another human, just seeing his or her face, the emotions, just touching the pieces, just visually staring at physical pieces and being able to move them. Like, it's just not the same. Online chess is just a little too inanimate. And I think for a lot of people, they make moves that are more careless that they wouldn't normally play if they're online because it's just a computer screen, it's inanimate. rather than over the board. For me, over the board is certainly the better experience, but I will say this, it's certainly less convenient because to get out of the house and go to a club on a weekly basis to play in over the board tournaments in general is a major commitment. And a lot of people aren't able to do that because of family and work obligations and their particular situation. That's something that you kind of have to work out. If you're playing over the board on a regular basis or even semi-regular basis, you do kind of have to work that out with your family. And I mean, not a big deal. Everyone has hobbies. Some people might be listening to that like, what's the big deal? But, I've tried to get people to the club and they would give me a long-winded explanation about, why it was hard for them to do. And I get that. There's no judgment. It's not, it is a big commitment. It's not everybody something, that everyone can do. And I understand that playing online is just much more convenient based on someone's schedule. So I totally get it, but I will always be an advocate for over-the-board chess. His fourth hot take is people who play 1+0 bullet are not okay. Well, I have to agree with him there. Now, 1-0 bullet, of course, is a 1-minute game with no increment or delay. And here's what he writes. If you have a friend who plays 1+0, they need help. I'm not a huge fan of sitting down for hours to play a single chess game either, but I also think it's reasonable that you should invest more time into a chess game than you do in making cup noodles. Otherwise, your games will be as tasteless and unfulfilling as your cup-contained meal. Does that mean I don't enjoy watching players like GMs Hikaru Nakamura and Daniel Naroditsky playing bullet? Not at all. They can create true works of art with mind-boggling speed. But let's face it, when regular players try to play 1-0 bullet, their quote-unquote art looks more like senseless doodles. Please don't look at my bullet games, by the way. All right. So I agree with him there. I mean, we can talk about speed chess and whether you should play it or not, but 1-0 bullet is a complete waste of time. It's entertainment. You're basically just moving pieces. Hikaru and Naroditsky, they're on a totally different level. But for most of us, we're not going to be able to play a thoughtful game to any degree for 1-0 bullet. I mean, even a 5-0 game, that's at least reasonable. I mean, I like to use an increment, but with 5-0, you can at least think a little bit. 1-0 bullet is really just junk chess. If you do it for entertainment, fine. But if you're doing it for hours on end, I really don't see how, obviously, that's going to help you get better. So we're in agreement there. His next hot take, number 5, I believe, which I agree with, but I'm biased towards this. You know that. He says, D4 is better than E4. Yes, I said it. It's time for you to admit that 1D4 is way better than 1E4. I know you want to look cool and impress people with your daring and adventurous life choices, but you're only just kidding yourself, Regular players have no business playing 1E4. There's just too much theory, and that's not healthy. You have to know sharp lines in the Italian, Roy Lopez, French, and don't even get me started on the Sicilian. Just play 1D4 and chill. You'll thank me later. Well, that sounds like a more relaxed version of kind of what I've been saying on this podcast. But if you're an E4 player, it's all love. It's all love. Just giving an opinion. We're obviously keeping this light and fun this week. But I do actually agree with what he said, that second paragraph, because when you play E4, you really are setting yourself up for a lot of theory as far as the Italian, Roy Lopez, the French, all that stuff, the Sicilian. Whereas if you play D4, there's generally not as much theory, especially if you play like a system opening. We're going to get to the London in a moment. That's actually one of his hot takes. But I am a fan of D4 over E4, but that's just me. A lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, disagree. I know Bobby Fischer said it, E4 is best by test. A lot of coaches recommend E4. A lot of players do well with E4. So while I am a D4 person, and I do agree there is significantly less theory if you play D4 rather than E4, if you're an E4 player, all the power to you. As long as it's working for you, that's the main thing. And here's the truth about openings, and all kidding aside here, because we're talking about D4 being better than E4. You know an opening is good for you if you're getting a playable middle game. That's the bottom line. So whether you're a D4 player, an E4 player, a C4 player, if you're getting a good opening, and by that I mean you're getting middle games on a regular basis where you're equal, better, or slightly better, then it's the right opening for you. But going back to the original hot take, I do agree that D4 is better than E4. Again, that's a sort of polarizing opinion because D4 people are very adamant about that and very defensive about that. E4 people are also very adamant and defensive. So if you play one D4, you're my friend. If you play one E4, you're also my friend. Okay, so you ultimately have to do what's best for you. But obviously, I agree with this hot take just because I am a D4 person myself. And speaking of D4, that brings us to his next hot take, which is, he says, the London is the best chess opening. All right, I can already hear some people smirking right there. But anyway, here's what he writes. He says, while we're on the subject, let's pop another hard pill to swallow, shall we? If you're switching up to 1D4, you might as well go all in and play the London. I've already proved that the London is the best chess opening, and he has a link for a separate article on that. As you can see, I was not canceled, though some people did remove their Instagram pictures with me. You can try to diss the London all you want. Your words cannot hurt anyone who's standing behind the protection of that beautiful pawn triangle. All right, so as far as it being the best opening, I'm not going to say that. I will say it's a great opening, and because I play and because I talk about it a lot on the podcast, I'm not saying that you're quote unquote wrong if you're not playing the London. Not at all. I'm simply sharing. I'm simply saying that it works for me. I'm not going to say it's the best opening. I'm going to say it's the best opening for white for me. It's worked for me. I know it's worked for a lot of other people. Many people can't stand it, and I get that. But I will say the London is certainly a great opening. It's an excellent choice. I'll phrase it that way. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's the best opening because really, and it goes back to what I said about the other hot take about D4 being better than E4, it's really what's the best opening for you. What's getting you good games and playable middle games? What's working for you? So if you play the London and it's working for you, then you could say it's a great opening. If it's not, if you don't like it, then it's not a great opening. You have to do what works for you. I settled upon it after a lot of trial and error, after a lot of struggles playing E4 and just not wanting to deal with all that theory. But some people do really well with E4 and those theoretical openings and are into that. So it's really what's best for you. But anyway, that was his sixth hot take, I believe. Now, we go to Pedro's final hot take, which is you should never resign. So double negative there. So basically what he's saying is having a policy of never resigning is something he doesn't agree with. Here's what he writes, then I'll give you my opinion. So he says you should never resign. I know that GM Ben Feingold says you should never resign. After all, you might salvage half a point here and there. But at what cost, I ask you? I appreciate people's fighting spirit, but not when they're 12 points behind in material, have no counterplay, and their opponent still has 2 minutes on the clock. Not resigning is especially sinful when it happens on a daily game. Making your opponent ladder mate you while you play one move every 3 days is just plain evil. You both have more fun if you accept your fate and hit that new game button, because we all know you're not stopping right after losing a game, right? And then he writes, what are your thoughts on these 7 hot takes? Please tell me how wrong I am in the comments section below. And there was some cool comments. And of course, I am going to link this article up and reference it. I want to give Pedro Pinhata credit for giving me an idea for a standalone episode. But about his you should never resign. Basically what he's saying is if you're in a completely losing position, like egregiously losing, it really doesn't make sense to play on. But of course, people do. Now, if you're down just a piece, and let's say the queens are on the board and there's a lot going on, of course you shouldn't resign. I wouldn't resign then either myself. If you're down maybe 2 pawns, I wouldn't resign, especially in a speed game. Now, the quicker the time control, the less likely I would be to resign. But I'm more of a classical over the board guy. So even in those time controls, like even in the game 90, if I'm down a piece early on, let's say, I'm not necessarily going to resign if there's something going on. Because, I mean, think about how many times all of us have been down a piece, but we managed a draw or even won the game. Or think about the opposite. In a slow time control, we're up a piece and we end up drawing or losing the game. It happens, especially if the queens are still on board and you can complicate things. So I agree with him that you should never resign if it's completely and ridiculously losing. But if you're simply down a piece or a bit of material, it certainly makes sense to play on. But of course, he's referring to people who just have zero chance. And in those circumstances, I definitely agree that, you should resign when appropriate. Little bit of a quicker episode. This was kind of a season 1 type of length. If you remember, for those of you who've been with me a long time, like the original few seasons of this podcast were like 15, 20-minute episodes, kind of like in and out, sort of rapid fire type of episodes. So I kind of went a little old school there. So at any rate, I really appreciate you listening. The article on the 7 hot takes that I spoke about is linked up and referenced in the show notes if you want to check out the actual piece that he wrote. Again, this is our season 7 finale. Season 8 will begin at some point in the near future, but I'm going to take a little bit of time for the beginning of the summer, and then I'll be back all fresh with season 8 at some point. That being said, really appreciate you listening. If you're just discovering the podcast, this would be a great time to binge and catch up on what you missed. If you're sitting on the beach, you can pop in the earbuds, listen to the Chess Angle. Makes a great binge. Or if you're taking a summer road trip, we would love to accompany you while you're in traffic. Hopefully there's no traffic. I'm in New York, so there's always traffic. It doesn't matter if it's 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning. There's always traffic in New York and on Long Island. But what are you going to do? Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back soon. And as always, I hope you win your next game.